the second special session of Marmara Forum on sustainable development. In today's panel, we've been talking about a lot of things. We will talk about, I think the sound is not that good in this hall. Maybe you hear me better, but it's not that good to me. Well, I will introduce the speakers and then I will ask them to be seated because we have screens in front of you. The first speaker will be Yavuz Erdal Kayapınar. And we also have, he's a graduate of Istanbul University, and he has worked as an urban planner for the private industry, and then he started working as an urban developer. Since the institutional structure changed, he served for different institutions, including the Ministry of Forestry. And he has served as the head of planning in environmental institution. As of 2011, he has served as the Undersecretary of the Minister, and since 2014, he has been in charge of spatial planning. He has been highly involved in strategical evaluations, EU legislation, and alignment. He has been a member of the Environmental Assembly and the Council of State. He's a member of the Central Commission on Natural Resources. With regard to today's session, he has been involved in UN Habitat Forum and he has helped the preparation phase of Habitat 3. He's still serving as this head of spatial organization. The floor is yours. And the second speaker is Bülent Açıkgöz. Bülent has worked for UNDP. The floor is yours, Bülent. He's a graduate of METÜ and he had his first MA in the Department of Finance in METÜ and the second MA in Bremen University on developmental policies of the EU. And he's still a PhD candidate at METÜ. Since 2016, he's been serving for UNDP development program and he's been involved in various projects and he's an expert in local socioeconomic development, clustering, regional development, social policies and services, and urban policies. And then we will proceed with Regina for Orvañanos. She will go into technical details. Since 2013, he has served for this program and he's involved in evidence-based programs and he was trained as an architect in Mexico, in Germany and France. He has been involved in international development and Kenya, Switzerland are some of the countries that he has worked in spatial analysis. He has gained experience in various countries and he has served for Middle East non-engine infrastructure as UNEP senior. He has worked hand in hand with UNCHR in planning the migrants, and previously she was involved in the design of metro cable in Caracas. And last speaker is Simten Birsöz. The floor is yours, Simten. I can't see Simten. Yes, here you are. He's an expert in foreign relations. In YERELIZ, she's quite active. She holds an MA from Bahçeşehir University, and after completing the program since 2016, she has been involved in various NGOs, and she has served as a counselor. Currently, she's working for Şişli Municipality. She's in charge of R&D and fund development. Since 2018, she has been she's been offering a training in advocacy program of Şişli Municipality. She's been involved in various institutions, and she has taught heavily on good governance, smart cities, city matching, and the rest. Munich, Amsterdam, Vienna are some of the cities that she has worked in. Well, I think she has quite a lot to share. She has so many slides, and she has had great implementations in the municipalities. Let me continue with timing. Each and every speaker will have 16 minutes. You can watch the timer if you would like to. And if you have any questions, please raise your questions through your smartphones, because there is a smart application that you can use. Probably you have already downloaded this application. You can ask your questions through this application. We will get them. And for the very first time, I have seen such technology being used in such a meeting. So it would be very beneficial if you make use of this technology. Thank you.
Süre İnşallah uyarız. Anlaşıldı. Sayın Başkanım.
Ms. Moderator, distinguished panelists, distinguished guests, I'm pleased to have participated such an international forum panel. The city is developing solutions. The theme of this forum, I believe, is very timely, because to achieve the sustainable development goals and to ensure resilient, sustainable cities are standing, we, of course, obviously need innovative solutions. The local and international experiences and innovative solutions will be shared at this forum, and I believe that this forum offers a big opportunity for us all. First of all, I would like to thank to the Marmara Municipalities Union and all the other organizers who helped carry out this forum, and also all the contributors. I would like to thank them on behalf of my ministry, and I would like to thank you personally. I'll be talking about the Habitat 3 conference, the selected projects at national scale, urbanization in our country, and also some current studies. As you know, from 50s on, in our country, there's been a great migration from the rural areas to the urban areas. Even if we haven't been fully urbanized structure or infrastructure-wise, a large portion of our population moved to the urban areas. We had only 2 cities with a population of more than 500,000 people. In our day, it's 45 almost. Istanbul, Ankara, and Izmir municipalities were declared greater cities, metropolitan cities, and the number of municipalities, district municipalities, and also metropolitan municipalities increased. The number of the metropolitan municipalities from 84 on to our day has increased from 2 to 43, and but in that process, planned development couldn't be done. The cities couldn't be governed as desired. Our vulnerability to natural disasters increased. The intensity of traffic increased, and many other problems came in tow. To tackle these problems, especially the Habitat 2 conference and the fact that it was conducted in our country provided a momentum. And with this momentum, zoning practices were improved, the spatial planning activities were improved, city-urban infrastructure investments started to be supported, and social and collective housing activities took start. And on the other hand, organized industrial zones were established. So certain similar precautions as such were taken. In 2009, the first National Urbanization Council was carried out, and the urbanization activities were shared with our stakeholders. And can't guess with its acronym, the action plan, the Integrated Urban Development Strategy and Action Plan, was accepted at the High Urbanization Council in 2010. And this is a roadmap that targets 2023. So CAT-GES has been drafted, designed on 3 pillars: restructuring the spatial planning systems, improving the quality of space and life in the settlements, and strengthening the economic and social structures of the settlements. In line with the strategies of CAT-GES, there, of course, have been a series of changes and activities. The central and the local activities were followed by the monitoring reports of the ministry, and many actions have been put in practice so far. And for creating the new spatial development for our country, in 2010, the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Zoning and Construction was combined. They merged, and they continued and have been continuing with their duties under a single ministry roof now. And about urbanization, of course, many other subjects came to our attention. In 2015, by the UN, the Sustainable Development Goals were published, and at the Habitat 2 conference conducted in 2016, the new urban agenda of the next 20 years has now been put forward. And the ministry and also the presidential divisions follow these goals, and it has been integrated to our action plan, and institutions which are responsible for 17 of these goals have been identified for their roles and responsibilities. Monitoring is done through the voluntary revision reports. And in 2019, our country submitted its second voluntary revision report to the UN. Local and country-wise activities were included into the report. All the institutions have been integrating integrating the respective goals to their strategic plans. And in line with the number 12, 13, and 14 targets, our ministry has contributed, and there's a report about it. You can access to that report over our website. United Nations Habitat, an international platform, and its activities have been taken into the core of our activities by the Ministry of Environment and Urbanization. And as a country that hosted the second Habitat conference, and also as a participant of the Habitat 3 conference, our country and our ministry contributed at Quito City of Ecuador under the presidency of our head department. Our country was represented at Habitat 3, and distinguished other representatives of our country contributed to the policies put forward. The decision-making organ of the UN Habitat 3, the steering committee council, has been reformed. It has been revised into an executive board, and our country also has become a member to that executive board, and we as a country continue to contribute. And also we have taken steps in projects, in terms of projects and strategies, initiated activities to integrate the new urban agenda, global urban agenda, into our agendas. The agendas have been, the new urban agenda was translated into Turkish, and it was distributed to the respective institutions and authorities. And in 2018, certain activities took start for the revision of the National Urban Policy, and the second National Urbanization Council was held, and with the respective parties, the newly emerging subjects were addressed, and our vision was defined as human-oriented, livable cities. We have conducted activities on mainly 3-4 axes. So this was about urban identity, supporting urban identity, new approaches for urban transformation in natural disaster vulnerable areas. The third one is social cohesion, and the fourth one was identified as the role and responsibilities of local governments in the new urbanization agenda. And our national urban policies will be revised, and the respective activities and regulations have already been initiated. So resilient cities, spatial planning, urban transformation, urban identity, green mobility, smart cities, urban regeneration are some of the activities embedded into our policy. So in summary, I can say Turkey has been following the international agenda and combines it with the country-oriented policies and prioritizes certain projects accordingly to overcome the problems that our cities are facing. Our local agencies, our development agencies, and public institutions have been conducting many activities. To take these activities one step further, we have created certain models to ensure the participation of our citizens. And it's a must, it's a sine qua non to combine the local and global activities. The spatial planning And also, sustainable is an important tool for sustainable urbanization. And a new, higher scale spatial strategy planning has been put in our agenda, and almost all corners of our country, certain environmental plans have been completed with the local authorities and central authorities. Other than environmental plannings, especially by our coastlines, which are limited, we have a holistic approach for the coastal line planning. Other than the coastal lines, we have many analyses and studies for the marine life, and it is targeting the sustainable usage of seas, and it's an important tool. On the core of our strategic planning, we have an activity which was started last year. We call it the Turkish National Spatial Strategy Plan. And this has been addressed in the Urbanization Spatial Councils. The Turkey Spatial Strategy Plan has been put in practice with the consultancy from the Istanbul Technical University, and upon the instructions by our president and the minister. So the Turkish National Spatial Strategy Plan addresses briefly to say to the social, environmental policies. It covers the whole entire country, considers the schemes for spatial strategy. It has a certain monitoring and other respective activities involved. So in other words, our plan will be fully prepared and it will be in effect. The number 11 development plan of the UN is directly related with our national spatial strategy plan. And the sustainable development goals, when we have a look into them holistically, we will see certain issues related with sustainable cities, innovation, sustainable infrastructure, climate, and many other subjects. So from sustainable energy to the selection of production areas and preservation of natural habitats, we have a lot of elements involved. And with this understanding, I believe it's quite a time, and the Turkey's national spatial strategy plan also addresses the natural disasters like floods, erosions, or earthquakes, urban and rural area, a balanced protection of the agricultural areas. So briefly, the decisions on the usage of lands was included into the national plan. So it was taken into the agenda, in our agenda, and we have been running our activities with our university as well. Our university has conducted certain analyses, certain syntheses, and a comprehensive policy analysis was the subject we addressed yesterday with the participation of relevant authorities and their representatives. We made evaluations about our vision. So high level and also technical level participation and governance are the aspects ensured within the scope of our activities. So we will complete the Turkey's national spatial strategy plan, and we target to create local spatial strategy plans afterwards. And strong and resilient cities. For them, we need to renew the vulnerable construction stock. This is one of the most important subjects in our country. In 2012, urban regeneration law was put in effect, and in 53 cities, we identified 281 risky zones to work on, and expropriation aid or removal of the buildings or certain other aids have been provided to our citizens. So we went beyond rendering our stocks, construction stocks, more resilient, and we came up with a roadmap for the new urban regeneration. And it was stated that each and every city should have its own local urban regeneration roadmap, and in the areas where there are risks for natural disasters, the renewal of the buildings should be done stage by stage, and also resilience against adverse effects of climate change, transformation of industrial areas within city centers, financial support, zoning amnesty, and some other activities like ownership were addressed. And other than the earthquake danger or risks, recently we have been seeing other types of natural disasters like landslides or floods. So we need to ensure that the constructed areas are resilient against such natural incidents. And also our cities are responsible for the 70% of the carbon dioxide release, and that's why our cities will be playing a key role, and it requires our attention. Last week, with the participation of our ministry in New York, the United Nations Climate Summit was held, and cities, infrastructure, and local actions were some of the subtitles. And with Kenya, Turkey also assumed certain responsibilities at that New York summit last week. The green gas emissions, to reduce them, low emission transportation, and also rendering the poor and rural areas more resilient against the climate change are of some national policies. Of course, other than some national policies, we will have some local municipality level policies. The local climate change action plan is very important, and at our ministry we have been running legal and legislation oriented activities to contribute to the activities. Our ministry has some activities like national gardens, and also we have another project called Zero Waste. It has been put in effect. All the municipalities and institutions are running those activities with our ministry. Thank you very much. I know I exceeded my time 8 minutes by 8 minutes, but thank you all very much for listening.
Herkese merhaba.
Hello, everyone. I will very briefly talk about UNDP and what it is. As noted by the director of the center, we are aiming to scatter the goals of the United Nations, the developmental goals. Let me tell you what we do. Probably you all know about UNDP. By the way, previously I delivered my speech in another session in the morning time. UNDP, in a nutshell, is operational in more than 170 countries. We work hand in hand with the civil society, academia, and the government, and we offer them technical support to further develop their countries. Localization of the Sustainable Development Goals and documentation of them are some of the areas that we work on. Our local office has 3 pillars: inclusive sustainable growth, climate change and environment, and cross-cutting issues. Inclusive democratic governance. Inclusive democratic governance is about the economic aspect. On the one hand, the development has to be inclusive, and secondly, it has to be democratic. Climate change and environment is a critical topic to us. In this sense, we help to develop international policy, and we focus on urban policies. Moreover, in local administrations, we offer services, and we are highly involved in supporting them. Governance is another aspect. As long as governance is taken into consideration, we can be successful. That's why we attach huge importance on governance. Moreover, there's this gender equality that we take into consideration. Moreover, private industry and all the other related shareholders should become part and parcel of the activities that we hold. When we look into the development models, Sustainable Development Goals is a reference to us, and we are going through a transformation in this sense. Previously, the public industry helped the development, but nowadays, with the new development model or with the new development discussions, now we are moving towards a multidisciplinary, multi-shareholder structure where everyone works together. I think this is highly important because localization, in terms of localization of the development goals and in terms of mainstreaming the way that the institutions do business, cooperation comes to the fore. That's why we see cooperation between the private sector, public institutions, and academia gaining in ground. In terms of localization and mainstreaming these goals, we attach huge importance on these 3 pillars: private sector, public institutions, and academia. We believe that each and every institution is valuable to us. We believe in thematic integration, social development, competitiveness, rural development, public policies and services. They are all very much integrated. We should not only focus on social transformation, we should also take the economic growth into consideration, and we should adapt our vision accordingly. Let's go into the details. What does it mean to localize the Sustainable Development Goals? Why is it important? Which tools do we have? And how can we better integrate the SDGs localization in MAAPS missions and mainstreaming, acceleration, and political support missions? And finally, I will go into lessons learned and a recommendation. And I will go into some of the projects that we have been holding. What does it mean to localize SDGs? Why are we talking about local? So what do we mean by local? We're not only talking about urban or rural areas. There is also this peri-urban area. It's neither urban nor rural. We believe that in localizing the SDGs, different spaces have to be taken into consideration. In materializing our goals, the local shareholders should be also taken into consideration, including the municipalities, administratives, public institutions, and the companies that set up the ecosystem are all shareholders. On the one hand, we need an enabling environment which will help us. It requires a setup of strengthening of enabling institutional environments. Since the 11th development plan, we have had developmental goals in Turkey, and we have had a wide array of developmental goals. If this structure is not endorsed, starting with the local municipalities, then we will not succeed. So it is highly important for us to have an enabling institutional environment. On the other hand, in localizing the SDGs, we need more representation. And that's why we need to empower the process of all local stakeholders. On the other hand, we know that when we talk about local institutions or local units in rural, urban, or peri-urban spaces, there are societies living, and the individuals do live in such spaces. The public is in constant interaction with the private units, and we know that all the services are geared towards the local people. On the other hand, the ownership of this transformation belongs to the local people. So what we mean by local is all the people for whom sustainability goals are geared for. So it's the local level where people live. The government interacts in its most direct way with people. I will go into the governance system that has to be anchored. And I believe we have to set up the governance in the best way possible. I believe with regard to mainstreaming these goals, there should be implementation plans in place, and we have to further improve implementation plans. In this sense, all the UN institutions, including UNDP, will work hand in hand with the related institutions, and we will further contribute to the functioning of these mechanisms. In implementation of these plans and in design of these plans, it is highly important that we have the institutions in place under the coordination of the president. Various activities are held, and each and every institution contributes. For instance, there was this biennial biannual report, and we contributed to this report as well. So I believe all the shareholders should work hand in hand. Corporate coordination mechanisms are critical in the sense that everybody works in development programs. And in order to do so, the most critical element comes from coordinating these efforts and watching these efforts and preparing reports out of the results that we reach. Monitoring, reporting, and accountability are the other elements that we have to take into consideration. In terms of localizing the SDGs, there are some global tools in place. It helps you exchange information and experience, and the results of good examples and bad examples are shared through these platforms. I think these platforms might help us learn from each other. We share experiences, and it's a repository of an articulated set of tools to support local governments, their networks, and other local governance stakeholders in the SDG localization. Be it an NGO or let's say that an NGO in the field of environment might work in consultation with another NGO. That's why there are platforms that support coordination and cooperation between different institutions. With regard to urbanization, we have some tools which contribute to the 11th development goal. We have set up these tools based on our experience in different countries. We make use of these tools very frequently. Moreover, in localizing SDGs, there is this observation aspect, and we have prepared another set of tools. In terms of preparing projects out of 17 goals, we prepare such data tools. In localizing SDGs, let me talk about the experience of UNDP. A couple of minutes ago, we also elaborated on it. There is this top-bottom agenda with regard to development. However, only through local priorities and national policies we can meet the demands. That's why we need national priorities, local dynamics, and there is also Sustainable Development Goals indicators prepared by the TÜİK, Turkish Institutional Administration. On the other hand, another critical element is the impact assessment. We have to take impact assessment into consideration. That's what we totally believe in. We believe each and every goal should be observed, and the impact assessment has to be reported so that we will see the steps taken. Of course, we need to abide by a systematic approach. There is this SDG on top of it, and then comes the sub-goals, and there are different indicators. I mean, there might be even more than one indicator for each and every sub-goal. That's why we, as an institution, start with the indicators, and then we go to the next level, and we have enabled the institutions set up the systematics accordingly. Let me give you an example from Urfa, a city on the eastern part of Turkey. There is this common vision with regard to Urfa, and in this picture you might see the related local leaders. So we have talked about multi-level governance. Here you see, in this picture, you see the support of the ministers, the private industry, NGOs, and the rest. And at the end of the day, Şanlıurfa is not an economically developed city. However, with regard to 7th, 8th, and 17th goals, we have created a system, and we have focused on multi-level governance and local leadership for development. We have endorsed the local structures, and with regard to industrialization, a huge impetus has been gained. We have a portfolio which helps us proceed. The local administrators who have been affected by the Syrian crisis are the ones that we have helped out. And we have offered municipal intervention in host cities. As you are very well aware of, one of the 17 goals is related to environmental change. So we have focused on cyclical economy, which helps us make use of the recycled products, and we aim to contribute to local producers. At the end of the day, there is this 11th goal, which is about the sustainable cities. Let me give you another example with regard to the cities. It's about localization of the sustainability goals. There is this tourism initiative that we have taken up, and the critical element in here is that we've been talking about 7th goal, and 17th goal is about the localization and the cooperation in localizing the goals. So private industry is a must to us, and this program has been endorsed by the private industry. It is like a shareholder of this process, and we aim to position it accordingly. So in this slide, you see different goals that it contributes to. There's this local transformation and gender equality, focusing on the opportunities and decreasing the poverty. Many projects have been materialized accordingly. I believe the involvement of private industry in the inclusion process is a must to us. And the following examples come from agriculture. The main goal is to make use of the resources in the most efficient manner possible and setting up an economic model. We should integrate the related institutions and we should work hand in hand with the corporations. Last but not least, we have to take the environment into consideration and we have to respect the environment in producing. Women's empowerment in Southeast Anatolia region was another program that we took up. We attach huge importance upon it because we believe that with regard to the fifth goal of development, if we would like to have an inclusive development, then we have to have projects that are geared towards women, and women should be our shareholders. Let me wrap up my speech. The UNDP Turkish office and Global UNDP are instrumental in scattering the development goals in different platforms. There is this Business for Goals platform in Turkey. It is the first collective action of private sector to promote SDGs and establish partnerships. B4G is a platform-based approach to deepen responsible engagement with the private sector and working with the government to mobilize private sector resources for domestic investments in sustainable development goals in accordance with national development priorities. I might share the details. Since we have limited time, I won't go into further details. Another initiative is as follows. The SDG Impact Accelerator is a global accelerator built by a multi-stakeholder platform focusing on empowering systems entrepreneurs and innovators who are providing impact at scale. We do focus on Syrian crisis in this program. Our goal is to generate market-creating innovations, initially for refugee populations and least developed country populations, and to support the models accordingly. We focus on impact accelerator, and we offer financial and technical support. Let's say that in urban development, there is this problem with regard to access to water resources. If this is the issue, then we support them through this program, and we would like them to set up the development goals in the best manner possible. There is also this UNDP Turkey Accelerator Lab. We call it an accelerator lab. It's a model, and in this model, the traditional development problems are tackled and we come up with innovative solutions to these problems. We aim to contribute to the problematic issues, and the labs will accelerate their learning by operating within a global network where each lab learns from the rest by exploring multiple solutions in parallel. Our people are highly active in these accelerator labs, and they go to the field to gather data, and we aim to contribute to our global goals as well. Thank you very much for all your attention. If there are any questions, I will be glad to answer them. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Regina Orvañanos. I'm from UN Habitat. So, explain what, from UN Habitat perspective, means the localization of the SDGs. So, as it has been well discussed the last days, in 2015, the countries of the world came together to agree the set of goals, the Sustainable Development Goals, as a path towards achieving a sustainable future. A year later, in Habitat 3, the outcome document, the new urban agenda, was recognized. In this document, it was recognized the power of urbanizations and Sorry about my voice, I'm losing my voice. The power of urbanization as a, as a transformative force for achieving sustainable development. Yes, I have water. So UN Habitat is the United Nations entity in charge of working with local governments. So this is our mandate, and that's our approach for working in the localizations. So what localization means? Localization can be different approaches, but in the broader sense, it means working and adapting to local level the definitions, implementations, and monitoring strategies for achieving the SDGs. But this can be different levels of involvement of local governments. The SDGs, as an agreement, it was signed by national governments. So it's the national governments who are responsible for reporting on the SDGs. However, let's not forget that out of the Sustainable Development Goals, 2/3 of them are relevant at local level, and one-third of the goals can only be achieved by the actions of cities and local governments. I'm talking about actions like waste management, public transport, public space provision, policies for urban expansions. These cannot be achieved from if the local governments are not involved. So the involvement of the local governments or local and regional governments in the localization of the SDGs can be from supporting the preparation of the voluntary national reports, from being involved in the coordination mechanisms for how the national governments integrates local vertical approaches of multi-level governance, and the third, how the local and regional governments take actions at local level to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. So the localization of the SDGs can have different actions, from awareness raising, diagnosis of the cities, then the development of strategies and plans, and the monitoring, evaluation, and voluntary local reviews. From our perspective, successful localization will not be achieved until local development plans are fully aligned with the SDGs, and there is local monitoring strategies to assess progress in this regard. So throughout UN Habitat, we have different ways of, we have mainstreamed the SDG as fully aligned to our strategic program. So in every single project of UN Habitat, we're working towards supporting the SDGs and the New Urban Agenda. However, I'm going to talk about the City Prosperity Initiative, which is the area where I work. It's the United Nations framework for urban data, and its main intention is to help cities formulate evidence-based decision-making and monitoring strategies at city level. The basis of the initiative it is an index. It was born as the City Prosperity Index. It's a composite index that was initially developed to support cities in the measurement of prosperity and sustainability. It has the vision of understanding prosperity of cities from an integrated approach that moves away from the traditional economic prosperity, and in looking at how a balanced development, taking into consideration productivity, infrastructure, quality of life, inequality, environment, and governance interacts. So the idea is that a city that only looks for the economic development without taking into consideration the impacts of environment or the impacts of the social integration will never be fully prosperous. It is important for us that we are able to work in different contexts. And in this regard, we have been working with 500 cities all over the world in contexts as different as Saudi Arabia, China, Mexico, Egypt, Ethiopia, Russia, just to mention some. We work through the entire cycle, starting by measuring how are the conditions of the city. And in many times, the city don't have a baseline, or the information is spread across different institutions. So putting in place a monitoring system, helping the city collect data, understand what the conditions of the city are, then make the mechanisms of changing that conditions through appropriate policies, action plans, or strategies, and then being able to monitor in the long term. It has been fully aligned to the SDGs and the new urban agenda, but it's important that we're not talking only about the SDG 11, because there are many other goals that are relevant to cities. Let's say poverty, water sanitation, inclusion. They are not part of goal 11. They're across different goals. So what we're talking about is the urban-related SDG goals. Okay. So we have three complementary approaches, and this is embedded in the Sustainable Development Agenda to move beyond traditional ways of data collection. So we have the local monitoring, which of course is the data assessment, data collection, setting baselines, and being able to analyze trends. But we're incorporating new approaches, such as the incorporation of spatial analysis in the index, because many times the disparities at urban level are broader than the disparities within a large metropole, let's say like Istanbul, can be broader than the difference between Istanbul and a small city in Turkey. So by incorporating spatial analysis, we can also localize to neighborhood and district level and evaluate what are the differences within the city with the idea of leaving no place behind. And lately we have incorporated citizen perception surveys. And this allows having a second layer of information about the perception of the city of different stakeholders, and can also help disaggregate how the city is perceived according to the different people, with a people-centered approach. So how women view the problems different from men, how young people and older people perceive the different problems of the city. So as an index, we have the different particularities. So it's a tool that is fully aligned to the SDGs. It adapts to different scales of intervention. It can be localized to a specific context. But also it can help you identify the interactions of different dimensions and subdimensions of the SDGs. I'll incorporate the spatial indicators and qualitative perception measurements. I'll talk a little bit more. And why we moved from an index to an initiative is because a tool is good in the degree that it helps to achieve a purpose. So what we want to achieve in the process of localization is the engagement of different actors in the city level to sit together and identify the problems, but then also to be able to discuss the solutions and prioritize actions. Because there's always in the politics a decision to be taken, whether we will strengthen the already strengths of the city, or will we try to solve the major problems? Are we thinking of a short-term solutions or longer-term visions that are maybe more difficult to implement? So as an integrated index, it's very easy to see where at once the different components of the prosperity and make use as a tool for discussion. Being able, having a big sample of 500 cities also allows us to help the city benchmark. It's important to know that in the process of the SDGs, there is, unlike with the Millennium Development Goals, there is no set goal for cities. So it is up for the governments to put their goals of what they want to achieve within the next 15 years. So if they want to set the goal to reduce poverty by 50%, by 20%, it is for them to decide. But however, they need a baseline to know where we're standing and what is feasible to achieve for us. Having a wealth of information that is comparable allows us to know, for example, in this graph, is just to know if our city is beyond the above the trend of other different cities with comparable level of development or comparable city size. So where are we standing? Are we in a good position or in a bad position? Are we taking advantage of our strengths or a strategic advantage, or we're lagging behind? And finally, the most important is at the end to help get the diagnosis, put them together, discussion, making it as a forum for discussion with different city authorities, and make it as a tool to fully turn the diagnosis and action plans into policy instruments and local development plans. As an example, we have worked, these are different sets of examples where the diagnosis has been turned into metropolitan development plans, strategic visions for the city, Colombia, Mexico, New York, Wuhan, Malaysia, different cities where we can successfully help local governments in achieving a path toward the localization of the sustainable development. So, thank you.
This is inaudible to the interpreters, unfortunately. The speaker is to hold the microphone closer to her mouth, otherwise we can't hear it. Can I see who comes from the municipalities? Okay. If I scream, let me know. And who are from the NGOs? So one person. And can I get some examples from what institutions you come from? A university. Do we have local public institutions, authorities? Ministry of Urbanization and Environment. I'm asking this in order to know who is interested to get some ideas about this field, because we're going through a change, and this is about having the local governments get a better say about those changes, transformations, because we are trying to go to a paradigm change, civilizing the local governments and also localizing the civil society. What does it mean? The local authorities, I believe, still fall short in terms of listening to the local. And on the other hand, civil society organizations act on a too much, let's say, state-oriented manner, and they haven't discovered the local opportunities that much. But recently we have seen that many international civil society organizations have started to discover the local more. So YERELIZ, our institution, our NGO, is concentrating on that. There are some global problems. These problems go beyond states. And we can only solve this as individuals if we unite. For the local and for the global, we're looking for ways to find solutions. Sustainable Development Goals, Habitat Agenda, these are all important tools for us, because on one hand we might give the local authorities the chance to make international lobbying and some other resources, including financial resources. It, on the other hand, gives the NGOs, the civil society organizations, the chance to make local advocacy. And there are some tasks by the SDGs, proposed by the SDGs, and it gives the both parties the chance to see how things are unfolding, and we are trying to develop some tools here. I try to bring some of them with me. The city council, how to establish, for example, those structures. Citizen assemblies, and we have been also following the strategic plans recently to see how comprehensive the processes have been, and the SDGs, how much of them have been integrated. And climate is another important subject in cities. With different partnerships, we support the urbanization activities in cities, and we are planning to get, or targeting to get, a highly qualified cooperation with all the relevant parties involved. We are also over the website as an official partner. I'm not trying to make some self-promotion here, but if you want such a cooperation with them, they're open to it. So please go and defend and make the advocacy of your activities if you are conducting such activities too. We, as an NGO, has some activities. So we say that the sustainable development goals are not that macro. The municipalities are, yes, doing great works with limited resources. They have such a tradition, and they should also market what they do and defend and make what they do visible. So we published 2 studies, one about good practices from Turkey, and the other one is good practices from the world. We also held a conference about that. We had a participant from Madrid at this conference, from Köln, from Germany. We had guests, also participants from different parts of our country. Apologies, I have to pick up that piece of paper. And what's important here is that we are trying to create a paradigm change.
If we cooperate with the civil society, we won't go for traditional municipalities. We don't have to tackle infrastructure anymore. Now you have to make use of inclusiveness and go for human rights. This is where the competition lies in. And in doing so, you need to foreground yourself. You have to be conscious and you have to sell your products. So what we tell them is that we have matched your deeds with the development goals, but if you do it on a conscious level and if you turn it into an institutional policy, then different doors will open to you. In New York, maybe you will have the chance to advocate your findings and you will be able to make presentations over there. You will be seeing a couple of examples. In one of the meetings, we visited New York. I mean, we would visit New York, excuse me. But I don't know what will happen. The municipalities will be visiting New York to hold out a lobby over there. We asked for the endorsement of UNDP, and they said, okay, probably this process will continue. Okay, let's see. This paragraph is from the second report of Turkey. The local administrations is highly important in here. This is something new to us. In the 11th development plan, the local authorities and its coordination role is focused for the very first time. Our report was published. This is a national report, and the first one also had similar content, and this time, for the very first time, there are good examples with regard to what the municipalities are doing. I think this is highly valuable for the municipalities to feel themselves as a part of the process and to see that what they have been doing is represented in the international area is highly beneficial to our municipalities. We have to take care of that. And Turkey's Municipalities Union also is highly active, and in terms of mapping, they are doing their best to offer a guideline. Through various activities, they have been functional and they have led the studies. I have a video to share. I would like to share it with you. It will take just 2 minutes.
Dünyada her 3 kadından biri fiziksel ve psikolojik şiddete maruz kalıyor.
Tüm dünyada okuma yazma bilmeyen yetişkinlerin yaklaşık 2/3'ini kadınlar oluşturuyor.
Dünyada her sene 18 yaş altında tahmini 15 milyon kız çocuğu zorla evlendiriliyor.
Dünyadaki 33 milyon göçmenin yaklaşık %72'si kadın ve çocuklardan oluşuyor.
Siyasette Kadın 2017 haritasına göre dünyada kadınların parlamentolara katılım oranı sadece %23.4'tür.
Dünya erkek nüfusunun %75'i istihdam edilirken kadınlarda bu oran %50'nin altında.
İnsan ticareti mağdurlarının %71'inin kadınlar ve kız çocuklar oluşturuyor.
Erkek ve kadın çalışanlar arasında eşit işler için eşit ücret farklılığı %40'lara ulaşıyor. Sürdürülebilir kalkınma hedefleri arasında yer alan toplumsal cinsiyet eşitliği,
Gelecek nesillerin yaşamını daha iyi hale getirmek için en büyük fırsatımızdır.
Toplumun yarısını oluşturan kadınların yaşamsal ihtiyaçları karşılandığında
Ve gerçek eşitlik sağlandığında sadece kadınlar değil,
Tüm dünya kazanacak.
sürdürülebilir kalkınma hedefleri yoksulluğu ortadan kaldırmak,
Gezegenimizi korumak,
tüm insanların barış ve refah içinde yaşamasını sağlamak için
evrensel bir eylem çağrısıdır.
cesur bir taahhüttür.
unutma, değişim yerelden başlar.
Değişim yerelden başlar.
Değişim yerelden başlar.
Değişim yerelden başlar.
Cinsiyet eşitliğinin sağlanması için
Yerel yönetimler olarak yapacak çok işimiz var.
Değişimi başlatmak için sorumlu tüm belediyelerimizi
UCLG MEVA Toplumsal Cinsiyet Eşitliği Komitesi
sürdürülebilir kalkınma hedefi 5'in yerelleştirilmesi taahhüdünü imzalamaya
ve hayata geçirmeye davet ediyoruz.
Hadi sen de bize katıl.
sen de bize katıl.
sen de bize katıl.
UCLGMEVA Toplumsal Cinsiyet Eşitliği Komitesi olarak
28 Nisan 2018'de Karasi'de buluşalım.
28 Nisan 2018'de
Karasi'de buluşalım.
eylem planımızı hep birlikte daha güçlü hazırlayalım.
Bu çalışma nihayetinde
At the end, the following declaration came out of UCLG and MEVA. The municipalities gathered in here and they have detailed the works that they would like to undertake within this framework, and then came the follow-up period within UCLG, and there is one video that I need to skip. Okay. Marmara Municipalities Union also has tackled this issue and they have done their best. Global Compact also holds similar activities, and our municipalities are already members of this United Nations Global Compact. In preparing this presentation, my goal was to offer some tools and to see what we could do. I would like to go into the good examples book, but I don't have enough time, and you can reach these books online. If you would like to get some, I have a couple of them with me. But what I would like to tell you is that there is also this English example of them. There is this education, equality and participation, health policies, and the rest. So there are a couple of examples. With regard to environment, Kadıköy municipality has Bahriye Üçok Nursery, and together with this there are some other examples that we have taken into consideration, as you might see in the screen. Probably you also have such examples. Why do we have it? Because nursery is a natural ecological approach. It has been designed with a natural approach, starting with the tools and the way that the organic agriculture is made. It offers a method. Moreover, Zeytinburnu municipality has car serçesi application. These are some local implementations. However, connection is important in here. When you look into them, you will feel like you have been doing it. Yes, you've been doing it. Everybody has been doing it. The municipalities are doing great. However, making it sustainable and contributing to the developmental goals is something else. So this is what I would like to underscore. And we should also focus on lobbying and hold out the data. Let me continue with some other examples. As you might see them, I don't want to go into further details. There is this inclusiveness example, elderly rights and the rest. With İzmir municipality, we're going to initiate a program. An inauguration ceremony was already held out, and we will take a further step and say that sustainability directorate should be established, and we should further support them so that they will contribute to sustainable development and coordinate the efforts. If such an impetus could be gained, then we could be more sustainable. There are also these activities of the municipalities, but the general method is not to follow it up. First comes the activity, then comes matching. Let me give you a couple of examples. It might open up your brains. Esenler, for instance, lined up the sustainability goals, and then comes the activities. The activities and the goals are matched accordingly, and this activity contributes to that, they say. But what is missing here is which activity impacts which sustainability goal and to what extent, and how can we see that it turns into a policy. There is a Sakarya report. Şişli also has a similar report, Şişli municipality. The report of Bakırköy is a bit more extensive. It's like an activity report, and at the end comes SDG. And Maltepe's report is a special research. In conducting this research, Maltepe municipality has tried to gather the data, and it has tried to see what would be the prioritized goals and how different approaches might be adopted. On the other hand, they also aim to contribute to NGOs, universities, and different institutions. In this sense, they work hand in hand with the universities, and they aim to strengthen themselves. as a partner to the universities. Here comes the findings. In the integrated report of Kadıköy municipality, the priorities are as follows. There are those scorecards. In each and every neighbor, they ask what would be the priorities to people. Based on it, there are some breakdowns according to age and gender. And you might read these results in their website. As a conclusion, ending the poverty, education of high quality has the top place. Kadıköy has a method has adopted a method in the sense that it has prepared an integrated report. OECD's Better Life Index approach was integrated with the SDGs and the priorities of EQM and come up with a strategy, governance and decision aspect, social development. With regard to each and every variable, the current level has been determined and it has been supported with SDGs and it has been matched with the SDGs. Let me continue with some international examples. Do I have time? Sorry, I didn't notice that. Well, okay. Then I will wrap it up in just 1 minute. New York and Buenos Aires example. There are a couple of good examples. Maybe at the end of the presentation I can share these good examples with you. The global representation in these reports are highly important, and the integration of civil society could also be important. We as YERELIZ have been highly functional in contributing to development reports. We have a sustainable urban development web, and in this sense we would like to contribute to different municipalities, and we do endorse various municipalities. Last but not least, we have some strategic plans, and these are the examples. Okay, I will be concluding my remarks. Thank you. Since the microphone is closed, it cannot be heard. Thank you. I'd like to extend my thanks to our speakers. We have some questions. The first question comes from Erdal. Oh, excuse me, the first question is addressed to Erdal. Can we please see it on the screen? Why is the ministry that you work for not related to SDG 15? Can't you see the questions in here? Okay, what should I do?
Siz isterseniz söyledim ben şeyi zaten.
Evet, teşekkür ederim Sayın Başkan.
Çıktı mı?
Göründü, evet. Şimdi bakanlığımızda tabii 8 tane genel müdür.
There are 8 DGs under our ministry. They all have different functions. Sustainable Development Goals, Article 15, is important to us. The fact that I did not elaborate on it does not mean that we don't take it into consideration. There is this Directorate General on protecting the environment and natural resources. This directorate is highly involved in protecting the natural environments. Currently, we have preserved sites, the rate of which corresponds to only 9% of the total land, and we would like to increase this figure to 17%. That's why, in line with the Article 15, we do undertake some deeds. Moreover, we would like to focus on the sustainability of the forests and replacement of the forests that we have wasted. And it has to do with the roles and duties of the Ministry of Forestry. That is why I have to note that Article 15 is one of the articles that we take into consideration. We also aim to preserve the wetland as well. Please do not misunderstand me. Yes, please proceed. The second question is addressed to you again. In order to make the spatial plan of Turkey more efficient, what should the local administrators do? Or how are you going to support the local administrations on SDGs and climate change? The central administrations and the ministries are policymakers, as you know, and the local administrations have to implement the central decisions. In recent months, climate exchange has been a hot topic to us, and our ministry has adopted an action plan for the Black Sea region, and in the upcoming days and months you will be hearing about the action plans of the other regions as well. Local administrations do have some responsibilities in this sense. In terms of infrastructure, we are going through some challenges. With regard to infrastructure, İller Bankası, the provincial bank, is a bank of the provinces, as you might know. All the provinces that have been member of the provincial bank can get monetary resources from the provincial bank. They can get grants from the provincial bank all the time. On the other hand, in an attempt to increase the income of the local administrations, we need to change the law, and in this sense, the central administration will do its best. Both the Ministry of Environment and Urbanization will help to increase the income of the local administration. So the more income the local administrators have, the more they're going to prioritize climate change. This is what we believe in. There is one question to Regina.
What do you think for the effectiveness of spatial-based indicators in achieving, yes, we see it here, global sustainable development under UN Habitat umbrella? What can you say for the pros and cons of indicator-based assessment?
Yes, thank you. The new urban agenda clearly defines the sustainable development, the Agenda 2030, clearly defines as a priority, as a objective, leaving no one behind. And this includes leaving no space behind, which is why changing the approach of considering urban space from the space where the city happens to evaluating the space as an actor, where the configuration of the city can really influence if a city becomes prosperous, if the urban functions are inhibited by how the city operates. It can really, the way the urban configuration can help promoting social inclusion or can exacerbate inequalities. So being able to progress from considering space and being able to measure it. So what UN Habitat is trying to approach is to formalize what they call the science of cities, be able to evaluate urbanization from a scientific approach. So I do think it is very effective, and especially making use of the new technologies that can facilitate also getting data in context where cities didn't have data about slums, about public space, about transport. New approaches with teledetection, remote sensing, citizens, data collection can really facilitate understanding the urban conditions and make policies to resolve those issues. And finally, the pros and cons of indicators. Indicators are means for achieving something. They're not the panacea. They will not solve the problem. So understanding what it actually measures, but also understanding what they don't measure, what are the limits of indicators is very important. You can measure slums, or you can measure housing, but it will not tell you the quality of housing. You can measure if a city has public space or if a city has transport, but it will not tell you if this public transport is good, is sufficient, is affordable. So you really have to understand what you're measuring and what you're not measuring to be able to trigger a discussion and make a proposal and a solution for it. So I think that's all.
Thank you. Simten Birsöz'e bir sorumuz.
The undersigning municipalities, did you follow their performance in gender equality? Has it changed anything? And what kind of a change took place in the local level? We asked our municipalities to undersign that gender equality document and also adopt the equality policies and have a division to follow and monitor the equality-related issues. UCLG is policies also changed. This is what we have observed, and maybe it wasn't followed up very closely later on. But I can say that there was a visible improvement at our municipalities, but we are unable to report it now. And the second question, to follow the international agenda and to further develop the international relations, what can the municipalities do? They can be a member to our network. We have a local advocacy school. We have been organizing it for the past 2 years. We will organize it for the third time. So local literacy, local advocacy related issues are taught at those courses, and the experts also, with the experts we share some global priorities, for example creating funds, global competitions, and certain awards and other sources of information that the municipalities need. And I also would like to make a contribution. I will have to wrap up because we exceeded our time much. They will have to prepare for the next session. Okay, let me wrap up. We have had some strategic planning processes and we prepared reports, but I believe we need and we have actually covered some road about instrumentalizing those reports and putting them in further practice. I believe we also need to bring in the habit of strategic thinking. We have seen in these presentations that from UN Habitat to central government to the others, there are different instruments. I was going to ask you another question about the acceleration process, but as we are out of time, I can't. So we have the NGOs, yes, but I believe we need to be raising more awareness about strategic thinking. If you want, you can still share your comment, but please make sure that it's... We don't have that much time because we have 15 minutes of a delay. About strategic plan, maybe I can say something. The sustainable urban urban development study. Within that framework, we had a study with our municipalities. We visited many cities, many Anatolian villages and towns, and come up with a study of benchmarking comparison, and try to support them on a voluntary basis. And we've been following the results, the outcomes retrieved from that. And many municipalities included the SDGs into their agendas. There are some who clearly do it and those who do not maybe, but still we see an improvement. Have a good day. I have a question to Erdal. Maybe not a question, but maybe a need for clarification. As you know, in Istanbul, we had an Istanbul metropolitan planning experience, and we have seen that the works about Istanbul have become regional, and it has impacts on Marmara region, the whole Marmara region, negative or positive. That's why there is this need for regional planning. But about regional planning, we have heard from the development agencies in the previous session that they have their own definitions of regional planning. I guess that there are 4 or 5 development agencies in the Marmara region. But what I would like to ask is that we had a country development plan and also the architectural plans. And for long years, we in Turkey had problems about the discrepancies in between the two. So the city plans, the urban plans, and also the metropolitan cities, 30 of them, if we consider them together, and if we compare them also to the regional, national plans, what kind of a relationship or what kind of a hierarchy do you think we should have, or what are we at in terms of the levels of our activities? Maybe you were not here in the room in the beginning because our guest talked about it in the beginning. So you were in the room. Maybe you can answer very briefly. Right now, we have the high level plans, and also the plans by the municipalities, prepared by the municipalities. So the main issue here is that the municipalities are not adapting the high scale plans, and when they do not comply with it, then we are being responsible, the ministry. But it should not be as such. If there's a plan, we need to comply with it. There are some regional plans prepared by the agencies, and these are generally for the regions. A physical plan should not be mistaken for a regional plan. Yes, the ministry is coming up with an umbrella structure and creates that structure with the municipalities. And we have the spatial strategy plan, and it will be including the strategies of all the ministries, all the municipality decisions. It will attempt to harmonize all these to create a pattern across the country, and hopefully by 2020 we will have it complete. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your attendance. We would like to thank to our panelists. If you have other questions, please make sure you ask them to them during the coffee break. Thank you.